Hello everyone, I hope you are well, and welcome back to the Cosmodrome. In the last episode, I built a spaceport, which gives the region its name. This was a lot of fun, but quite unconventional for city skylines. Today, we're using the game for very much what it was designed for, as I start to build the main city. The main city is going to be located right in the middle of the map, currently where the square island sits, but it's not going to remain square for very long. The first thing I did was just clear out anything I'd built already, before I could start laying down roads. I've always had this very clear vision in my head of one of the city's main streets lining up perfectly with the space elevator. So that's what I wanted to achieve first, by laying down a road, turning the camera, and trying to get the angle just right. Hopefully this will look amazing when the city is finished, a canyon of buildings framing the space elevator off in the distance. The city, which I'm naming Helios, was designed to be seen from space, and will take the form of an 8-pointed star. To get the shape I wanted, I started off in the center, making a cross. To get the length of the roads right, I counted the blue lines that appear when you stretch it out, and then made sure I had the angle snapping to a 45-degree angle, and then started to link up all the ends of the roads. It's safe to say that the base game of City Skylines isn't always the most exact measuring tool when it comes to doing designs like this, so it did take a few tries to get it right. There were a few problems here and there, the roads didn't always snap straight, sometimes they didn't want to connect together, so I had to use a smaller road, and then swap it out for a larger one. It was a very long and tedious process, and after I finished it the first time, I decided it was a little small and I could go bigger, so I did. This city was built by the country's government. Construction of it started around the same time as the space elevator. As soon as the space elevator's foundations were finished, constructors moved to building the base of the city. As I've mentioned before, Helios is a country full of natural resources, and this means there was a lot of quarries and mines. A lot of waste rock, which had previously just been sat in massive piles next to the quarries, were brought here and dumped in the sea to start off the foundations. Then the rest of the foundation was built with millions of tons of concrete, which this country had a lot of. Obviously the sheer scale of this construction meant the country had a massive shortage of construction materials and labour for the rest of the country, so it really was putting all its eggs in one basket with this massive project. The reason for the city, like with most other things in this project, all link back to the space elevator. It was built to house workers for both the space elevator and the spaceport, and would also become a place for tourists to stay, to come and wander at the space elevator, and provide even more revenue for the country, as a long-term plan after the precious natural resources which gave the country most of its wealth run out. The government wanted Helios to be a model city that was self-sufficient, and they also wanted to be very ecological as well, which is ironic considering how much concrete would be used to build the base and the buildings. The city was split up into districts, and companies could come and bid for plots of land, with bursaries and incentives offered to the more ecological projects. They wanted this place to be a beacon to the rest of the world, to show them what Elysia could do. One design feature of the city, which I know isn't realistic, is a monstrous 8-way junction right in the centre of the city. I know this is absolutely ridiculous and no way would ever be built in real life, but I'm just going to go with it, see what happens. It'll be very satisfying to watch the traffic move through this monstrosity in a time lapse, so I'm leaving it for now. So as now you can see, we are left with a very flat 8-pointed star. I didn't want this place to be completely flat, so I decided to add some terraces to it. There was going to be plenty of public transport in the city, like metros and monorails, so I wanted the height of these terraces to match the height of the metro lines so they could neatly join onto the terraces without too much elevation changes. I then had to decide what size and shape I wanted these terraces to be. In the base game, we can't just build a terrace in the middle of land. I was going to have to use the keys, which meant reflooding parts of the map. I had to build these little channels, then take any existing road going through and to limited bridges to make sure all the roads and terraces could fit together. This process was very long and frustrating as the roads and the keys rarely play well together. You can be there for ages just trying to get the angle of the corners right. In the end, I built 4 terraces, which will make for some interesting projects later on in the build. also had to add ramps as well, so cars are going to be able to get up here, so I had to add in some slopes. Again, this is all very tricky, very tedious, but I got there in the end. Now it's time to start placing down the buildings. The first bit of the city I wanted to get built was the point closest to the space elevator. This is going to be a tourist district, a place where tourists can come and get a brilliant view of the space elevator. I placed down the Statue of Life and Death here. It has this lovely winding helix monument in the center of it, which could be seen as an artist's interpretation of the base of the space elevator. I also wanted there to be a little beach here, so I changed up the key slightly to have the version with the steps on it, so pedestrians can walk down to the beach. It's also important to have a ferry terminal around here. I've already set up one on the space elevator, so this is where you catch the short ferry ride across. There will be multiple ferry lines going all over the city and multiple islands as this build continues, so hopefully this place will become very busy in the future. I then started to detail up the park. I wanted this place to be functional with plenty of tourists visiting, so using the Park Life DLC I turned it into a proper park, placing down an entrance and then started to detail it up with paths, trees, cafes, even a little fairground. I really like these tall narrow trees that came with a free update. I kind of want these to be almost like a symbol of this particular island, so I'll be using them throughout. As this is going to be a tourist district, I turned the commercial theme into tourism. Hopefully we'll get some lovely high-rise hotels, and close to the water we'll get a few sun decks, arcades, souvenir shops, that kind of thing. After painting down squares of various sizes, now again it's the waiting game. Deleting the things that I don't think look right where they've spawned, or if something gets too repetitive, and turning the things I do like into historic buildings so they stay there. I then did a bit more detailing whilst waiting for things to spawn in. I'm trying to keep the detailing a bit varied. Sometimes I like plazas, sometimes I like gardens. I just like there to be a variety of things. Helios is going to have its own metro system, so it makes sense that there'd be a station here. Obviously I could use the small ones, it would probably make more sense to use those, but I really like the look of these ones. You can actually see into them, which became part of a content creator pack. One of the joys of this game is watching people moving around, including the cars, vehicles, and trains. So I don't see why we need to hide the subway trains away underground. Sure, it has a much bigger footprint, but I love the fact you can actually see the trains coming and going. Obviously for these commercial buildings to stay open, we're going to need people to actually live here. I placed down some high density housing. I've gone for the eco theme. I think these high-rise buildings look by far the best. Again, I just have to wait and see what spawns. I prefer some of the non-leveled up versions of these buildings. If you keep letting them level up, they get really high. I will allow some to grow, but to add a variety of height to the buildings, I make sure to have a lot of them stay at level 1. And I think they kind of fit the theme better. A lot of these houses would have been built in the 90s, so I want them to stay fairly plain. Sometimes I quite like it when the same buildings spawn in next to each other. I like to think that these were all built as part of the same housing project by the same developer, so it makes sense that all the buildings would have a similar theme. Sometimes I'll fence these in together, give them a little community garden and some parking. Where the high-rise hotels had spawned in, I wanted to give them a little bit of detailing. It would have been nice to add some pools, but unfortunately there's no pools other than the community one, which is a little large. So I decided to add down sun decks and gardens instead. These will give the hotels more of a resort kind of look, rather than just a hotel standing there on its own. By making the whole island this star shape, it does mean I am left with a lot of awkward gaps. A lot of triangles going on here. A lot of the time around here I was just adding fenced off palm trees, kind of filled up these little gaps nicely, and kept the whole tropical feel to this place. I had plenty of other little gaps to fill. The easiest solution is to fill these with trees and bushes, but I added a few more little plazas and seating areas, utility areas, things like that. I still had a few larger gaps as well, so I started to add service buildings to make sure this whole place actually functioned properly. I also plopped down a few of the unique buildings as well, and added a few trees and decals to help blend them into the rest of the environment, and fill up more of these awkward shapes that I'm left with. quickly scanned around, filled a few more gaps, deleted a few buildings I didn't like. This district probably isn't really finished, but it's pretty close to it. I'll probably have to keep returning to this district, probably off camera. Things are bound to close down, as the population isn't yet big enough to maintain this area, and there are still plenty of buildings that have spawned in that haven't turned into historical buildings yet, so they're bound to change their shape. But I was very happy with how this place looked, and you can start to see my vision of the view looking down the main boulevard at the space elevator. This is only a tiny bit of the city done, there's still loads to do, and I really hope you will join me in the rest of the journey as I build this city and the rest of the region. So I think that just about wraps it up, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this first look at me actually building a city, and you'll join me in this adventure as the series continues. I'm Foolish Pedro, colossal thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.